If you started your day by just spending time with God and reading the Bible every day, you're creating a good habit. And when you create that good habit, it's going to change the way you think, the way you respond.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Facts Over Feelings. And we are on day 2 at the Turning Point USA America Fest. And I'm incredibly excited about our next guest that we have coming up. We have none other than Shane Winnings. I love the last name,
Thanks,
Winning,
man.
right? And Shane is a military veteran. He's a former law enforcement officer, spiritually led evangelist, and he is the chairman and the CEO of a long-standing and prominent men's ministry, the Promise Keepers. And Winnings is the top social media influencer who reaches millions on his YouTube channel, and he's the host of the Promise Keepers podcast and Pursuing Jesus, ranked in the top 50 Christian podcasts. Shane, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, where I wanted to start off is maybe tell the audience a little bit about your background and your American dream story.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought I'd be career military, and so my dad was Air Force. I went to Army ROTC in college, graduated in 2012, and I joined the military as an officer, served with the 1st Special Forces Unit, and deployed to Afghanistan in 2014. And when I got back, I felt like God told me to get out. And I was like, well, why would I get out? This was my dream. But I just felt like that's what he's telling me to do. And so the natural path for me was, become a cop, and I still wanted that adrenaline. I wanted to fight crime. So I did that for 5 years. But during that time, I had a radical encounter with the Lord. And so I started preaching on the street during the day, and then I was fighting bad guys at night at work. I did that for 5 years until he called me to leave. I had a 4-month pregnant wife. Was making over $100,000 a year. He said, go be a missionary to America and go on donor support. So I left my job, all that. I traveled the country for 4 years preaching. And then the last year, I took over Promise Keepers. So, man, it's been a wild ride.
No, that's incredible. And I guess tell us a little bit about that journey with the Promise Keepers. What has that been like for you, and how has that been, I guess, fulfilling? There's so many people out there that are looking for their purpose. They're looking for their voice, and it seems that you've found that. And what has that experience been like so far?
Yeah, it was a great honor, because Promise Keepers was a massive men's ministry in the 90s. Gathering millions of guys. And so it kind of went away for a little while, and it's back. And so I'm thinking to take this over, what a legacy it has. And I never saw myself here again. I thought I'd be in the military. The only reason I got on social media is because God told me to start making videos, preaching.
Yep,
I didn't know it would take
Sometimes
take
we have
off.
a great idea, but he has a God idea.
That's
we gotta
right.
Pay attention to it.
So I didn't think all these things would go viral and I'd get all these followers. But, my advice to anyone else is just keep saying yes when God asks you to do something, and let him lead your life, because he's got a crazy life for everyone.
No, I love that. And I know the Promise Keepers, they're just one of the largest Christian men's organization that's out there. What would you say one of the number one challenges that Christian men face in today's society from your experience being at the Promise Keepers?
The church at large does not have a lot of things for men. If you look, a lot of churches, they'll have women's ministries and women's conferences, but they don't have anything for men, or they've got a twice a year men's breakfast, nothing that's consistent. And so for us, that challenge is getting guys to actually come to stuff, especially in an age when guys are like, oh, can I live stream it? It's no, bro, get here, come hang out. And so we're standing up men's groups across the nation. We've gone from 18 to almost 100 in the last year. And so that's encouraging to me, is because we're getting real guys spending time together on a weekly or monthly basis.
Absolutely. And I think, that solves probably the number one problem that's out there, is I feel like a lot of men like that, they lack community. And I think that's what it sounds like at the Promise Keepers. You guys have really fostered that culture of community that brings people in and then gives them what they didn't realize that was missing in their life. I guess, what is the message that you have out there for men that feel like they're unworthy or they're ill-equipped?
Man, well, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. That's what the Bible says. And so if you feel like you're not equipped to do what God's called you to do, then you're in the right spot, because usually he'll call you when you're not qualified so that he can be the one to qualify you. I think for men that feel disconnected, it's like you've got to take that step. You've got to get out there. You've got to try to engage with other guys. The reality is when I came home from war, I felt like not a lot of guys could relate to me except other brothers who I deployed with. But I shouldn't let that wall me off from connecting with people, because the reality is people do want to meet you where you're at. They don't know how, so you gotta let them in. So I'd say, man, let your walls down a little bit, and you'll make some friends.
No, I love that. I love that. Then I guess what advice would you have for the guy that's out there? He's facing the force of average in life, right? So we got so many people. Even you look at our youth statistics. 78% of our youth, 25 and under, are living paycheck to paycheck, and I think that continues on into adulthood. So for the person that wants more out of life, they're maybe looking to embrace their faith, they're looking to find that purpose, their God idea, but they're maybe hindered by health issues, financial issues, mental health issues. What recommendation or advice do you have for them to start finding a little bit of momentum in their life to get to where God's calling is?
Yeah, man, you just do what you can do, and then you'll need a supernatural help with what you can't. To the health thing, I know a guy who has no arms and legs, but he's a very successful businessman. He's one of the greatest evangelists of our time. His name's Nick Vujicic.
Oh yeah.
So if anyone's going to have a setback, it's him. He's like, I don't have any freaking limbs, but he's doing it. And I seen a guy who is also paraplegic, and he was leading worship at his church. And so these are people that you would look at on a surface level and say, man, they're going to have obstacles, and they do. But you don't see that because they're just out there doing what they can, giving it everything. And I think when we become guys who stop having a victim mentality, we're like, I don't care what my setbacks are, I'm going to keep going forward. It's like I saw a video of a guy, he lost his arm and he loved to golf. He learned to golf with one arm. No one was going to stop him. And so that's that killer mentality that's like, dude, I'm going to keep going no matter what comes against me. We need that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people sometimes will look at that as like, oh, you got the rose-colored glasses out. But there's actually a lot of science behind it, right? You actually, if where your attention goes, energy flows. And if you're giving your problems too much attention, your problems are only just going to grow. And then you're going to be drowning into those problems. But if you give the solution the attention, you give the positive affirmations, you give God the attention, well, then, God's going to grow into your life. Two different types of people in the world all the time. The person that can never catch a break. They're always cemented in a setback.
Right.
And bad thing after bad thing keeps happening to that person, ironically and coincidentally. But then you look at the other side of the coin, you got the person, it's almost like they got the Midas touch. Everything they touch turns to gold. Every conversation is just engaging. It's an electric. And I think it's just a different frequency that those people are operating on. And I think the cool thing is that at any moment, somebody can choose to make a pivotal decision in their life to operate on that alternative frequency, which I think that's the God frequency.
That's right. You got to flip the switch. You got to, again, the victim mentality has to go. And you say, I don't care what my setbacks are. The Bible says a righteous man falls 7 times, gets back up. You look at these billionaires and millionaires, a lot of them have gone through bankruptcy. They've been betrayed in business, whatever. What's the difference? They kept going. You
Absolutely.
Hear these guys, if I went bankrupt tomorrow, I would create a new idea. I would create a new product. Why is it that the business world can figure it out, but as Christians, we face a trial and we're like, oh, my life's over and blah, blah, blah. It's not going how I thought it would. It's like, dude, that is low IQ, weak mentality thinking. Just get back up and try again.
And I guess to the men that are listening out there and they're looking for more, what is one small, simple, actionable step they can take? And the reason why I say that is because I think a lot of times men will, again, to your point, be their own worst enemy, get caught up in their mind. They're seeking perfection. They'll find themselves in this place of overanalysis paralysis that is the enemy of action. And I think the answer to everything in life is getting a little bit of action that turns into a little bit of momentum, that turns into a lot of bit of momentum that can change the trajectory of your life. What is that one action step that most men can take to start feeling that momentum in the right direction in their life?
I think spending alone time with God every day. If you do that, if you started your day by just spending time with God and reading the Bible every day, you're creating a good habit. And when you create that good habit, it's going to change the way you think, the way you respond. And a man who takes care of his family, his body, his business, everything unto God, he's going to far outplay and outperform anyone else, because that conviction and motivation is greater than anything worldly. So a lot of these guys that are dealing with issues, they've got these little ankle biter sins or bad habits. They'd be broken off if they just got some discipline. Said, you know what?
Absolutely.
I'm going to read my Bible every day. I'm going to hit the gym every day. And I'm going to try to eat right. You do those three things and watch how your life just takes a different turn.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's also, too, reframing how you look at challenges. Like, if you look at challenges as a blessing and a positive thing into your life versus, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened to me, like that woe is me mentality, that because I used to be that guy, right? God, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me again? But then I realized on the opposite end of every single challenge was a different version of me, a better version of me, and then the next best thing into my life. So then started to realize, well, God's doing these things for me, because if it wasn't for the challenge, if it wasn't for, when I was a kid, I was told I had a learning disability and I wasn't going to amount to anything. But if it wasn't for that challenge, I wouldn't have found my superpower of relentless work ethic that I found from my dad to try to solve the way I can close the gap. And I believe God put that in my path because he wanted me to go help other kids that are maybe dealing with that same thing. And then later on in life, I dealt with health challenges. I was in corporate America before my entrepreneurship journey. Woke up one day, I'm climbing the corporate ladder, and then I couldn't walk. Doctors told me I was going to be on disability for life, and I faced that tipping point in my life to listen to my doctors, live in a lens of fear, or step out into the unknown and embrace faith. And I got back to work, stepped into my faith. Circuit City then went right as I started to get back to work. I'm 3 months behind on my mortgage. Circuit City goes chapter 11. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, God, what are we doing again? Now I'm broke, jobless, dealing with health issues. So I prayed on it, met a friend of the family in the insurance business, young kid doing well. I was like, if he can do it, I can do it. I can't do retail anymore with my health. 2 weeks later after that, God, I knew it was ordained purpose, because 2 weeks later after that, there was an insurance brokerage across from the DMV right next to Circuit City that went out of business. Perfect location. I'm like, that's going to be my location, but I'm behind on my mortgage and I don't have the money. Where am I going to find that? Prayed on it some more. About 3 weeks later after that, the liquidators came into Circuit City and they're like, David, we got to get rid of all the open merchandise, and I don't care what you get, pennies on the dollar. So I put my hand up. I'm like, what if I just made it easy on you guys and I bought all that merchandise? Took the last $7,000 in my name and on my 401k, bought up $70,000 worth of all these used electronics, put it in my living room while I was trying to start this insurance business, started a side eBay hustle, sold all that merchandise, paid off my debt, caught up my mortgage, and came up with the minimum capital to start that first insurance agency. And then we ended up scaling that to a $22 million company. But had I stayed in that lens of fear, the woe is me, I can't believe this is happening, God's doing this to me, and I lived into that lane, I wouldn't be sitting here today with you. And there's probably similar circumstances in your life. So it's like the men that are out there, what I like to tell them is get excited about your challenges, because I'm nobody special, and I'm not sharing that to impress anybody, but to impress upon everybody that's listening that if I can do it, you can do it too, and you can turn your challenges into a life transformation. On the show, it's been my privilege to have you here. We got Shane Winnings and David Williams. I think that's a winning combo there.
There you go.
And what we like to wrap up every episode with, before we ask our final question, is if you had the power and the authority, the executive power the president had, and you could cast anything into existence with that pen, any one thing that would be your legacy to leave behind and shape and shift America, what would that one thing be?
Man, that's such a big question. I think for me, it's the message of become a follower of Christ, not just a believer. I was a believer for 25 years. I served as a drummer in a megachurch, but I wanted to be dead, and I was living like everybody else. I was depressed, I was anxious, I had addiction. When I became a follower of Jesus, that's what changed my whole life. And God's calling us to go all in. And so we want to talk about facts over feelings. I don't always feel like, reading my Bible. I don't always feel like praying. I don't always feel like doing the right thing, but I don't live by feelings. I live by facts. I live by truth. and Jesus is the truth. So that's what I'd want to impress upon everyone.
No, I love that. And I guess last but not least, what does facts over feelings mean to you?
Man, it means we live by faith, not sight. There's so many times where earthly evidence is telling you one thing, but you know that God is saying something else. And, when I was a cop becoming a missionary, there was no reason I should quit my job. I got a pregnant wife. I've got no donors lined up, but God told me to do it. And so in the face of natural evidence saying don't, I said, you know what? I'm going to live by faith over my feelings, because that's a fact to me. If God spoke, it's a fact. And man, it's worked out so far, so I'm going to keep going.
Well, I love that. That's a great answer, and this has been a great episode, so I definitely appreciate your time and having you on the show today. And folks, this has been another episode of Facts Over Feelings live here at Turning Point USA America Fest, and we're out.